The difference between the good, the great, and the ugly property managers. Hi, I'm Sam Powell.
And I'm Joe Kraus, and we are the hosts of the Property Pals Australia podcast. And in this episode, we are discussing how to choose the right property manager by interviewing them and what questions you should be asking them to ensure that you know whether there's somebody that you want to work with long term or know somebody that's going to be a bit of a basket case. We also talk about how to get the property manager to work harder for you and actually love doing so in the process to create that win-win.
We also touch on some key negotiation tips with rent rises and also property management fees throughout the episodes. And we also look at the key lessons about maintaining a property and why you should be doing it. And we'll also share some examples of like a dud property manager versus the great property managers to build that knowledge in your mind. So before we get stuck into the episode, I did want to share with you that this is not the only way that we can help you in your property journeys. So we also have some free resources on our webpage. So jump online and have a look. It's a key way to help maximize your borrowing capacity. It's a mini course we put together to help you. So jump on board and enjoy the episode.
Yeah, head to propertypals.au/free resources to get that and a bunch of our other resources. Let's dive in. Welcome to Property Pals, the podcast where we share everything around how to build a property portfolio, from researching areas, financing, structuring, buying, selling, and reinvesting to live a life of financial independence. As a disclaimer, any information shared by myself, Jaryd, Sam, and the Property Pals team is strictly general and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should consider seeking independent legal, financial, and taxation advice from a qualified professional.
Yes, property managers, property pals, property managers podcast, all the P's.
So many P's.
Hopefully we don't get too tongue-tied today.
And 2 D's in this one, due diligence. Do your DD on
I wonder where you were going with
property
that
managers.
Yes.
Guys, if you're listening, keep your mind out of the gutter.
Yes, due diligence is very important with property managers, just like everything else with property.
Because there's some real rubbish property managers out there, let's face it.
Yes, as I say, there's good, there's great, and there's shit. So we want to help you avoid the shit ones and decipher between the good and the great in this podcast episode today.
So what separates a great property manager from a good one? Let's just avoid the really crappy ones. But what separates the good from the great?
Oh, good question. It comes down to there's the job roles that they're entitled to do, obviously paying them to do. But there's just that little bit of that emphasis which comes from a number of things: experience, knowledge, communication, organisation, problem solving. And that's what we're going to be covering today.
Yeah. Do you have any examples of some property managers that, in our last pod, you did mention around getting something fixed in your unit in Cooley, but do you have examples of, I've got some examples with my properties, but I'd love to hear some of yours.
Yeah, so we'll start with experience, right? So when you're looking around, the turnover rate with property managers is quite high because it's quite a intense job. You've got to be a real people person.
You mean the turnover in the firms is high?
Oh,
not between
in the industry, the property manager industry. It's from memory, it's like a 9 to 12 month life cycle of a property manager, where people come in, they do the job, and then they move on to something else because it's just one, they don't get paid enough to deal with what they have to deal with, because you've got whinging tenants, you've got whinging owners, you've got things breaking. They're problem solvers. So you've got to find those people who have been in the industry for a number of years and still love it, and that's the key. And that comes through interviewing them, asking for referrals, and also just really trying to understand what makes them tick when you're talking to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm just going to get granular here. So that means you could go to a property management firm and ask them, how long have you been in the industry? And they're going to tell you, a couple of decades or whatever it is. But then you might get switched between different agents, and which is what we talked about with your property, is you might get switched between different agents, as somebody might come in for 9 months or 12 months, they might manage your property and hand it over to the next person who doesn't give a crap, and then you've got to deal with somebody that, is like having you to try and problem solve how to fix this issue in the unit, and you're basically doing their job because they suck at what they do. And so how do we get the individual and keep the individual, not just the firm?
Well, yeah. So when you go into a property management agreement, generally you're signing up to a 12-month agreement for them to manage a property, and you're at the beck and call of that individual property manager that you've selected. You try and ask those questions up front. All the lessons I've learned is you don't just find them as a great property manager and they tick all those boxes. Ask them deeper questions into, well, what are you working towards in your career, and where do you see yourself in the next 12 months? Because I'm doing this 12-month lease, I want to be with you as a person, not the firm. Because in my experience, I've had some really great property managers that I've been working with, and they've been poached from other firms, and because they are good and they can see that's the type of person that they want to invest in, because they know they're going to be a lifelong property manager, which is going to be great for their business, because, as you know, staff turnover is quite painful. You've got to retrain people. And that's why I try to limit it to a 12-month agreement. They'll try and sign you up to a 2-year agreement, and then you're stuck with them, and there's break fees involved in that if you decide to move on. But everything is a negotiation when it comes down to that point too.
Such a good point, because I'm with a property management agency in WA with my WA property, and I had a really good property manager, Lisa, for the first sort of year.
Hi, Lisa. Well done.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And actually, just thinking about this, Lisa, I'm going to have to call you, because I got handed over, it feels like, to somebody else. And then just in the last couple of months, a couple of issues have popped up, and this person has been like, what do you want to do about it? Like, here's the ball, it's in your court. Like, what do you want to do? Whereas Lisa would just say, this has happened, do you want me to do this? And she'll give me 3 different options or 2 different options. And I'll be like, option 1. And she'd go away and get the thing sorted and be like, it's done. I'll send you the bill. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. But now I'm getting like, I'm having to use my brain and take up my capacity to solve this problem when that's what I'm paying them to do. And so with that, does that mean, and this is a question directly for you, for myself personally, which I think people are going to learn from, does that mean I should, once I do find the firm that I want to use, then I go, hey, can I speak to 2 or 3 property managers and see who I would prefer to use in the firm?
They probably won't want to compete against each other in the firm. You'd have a level of a questionnaire which you can fill out, which is these key questions such as, how do you go about resolving minor issues, major issues, and that's a key criteria that I like to look for is, when an issue does pop up, do you provide 1 to 3 options of remedying that issue? And often that's the way you want to go, because, as you said, it takes up your brain capacity. You're not in that location often, and even if you are, you don't want to have to drive around to your property to try and fix it yourself. Like, that's what you pay a manager for, and they're there to give you those options. You'd have a key person that you'd want to stick with, but you can also let them know that if it doesn't work out with this one individual person, what other alternatives do you have? But seeking the person with the most experience up front is key, and sticking with them is also very helpful with your journey.
So let's go down that track in, like, how do we find that person and what qualities they have? So first and foremost, like you said, experience.
Yep.
And then, experience in terms of like how many properties they've managed, how long they've been doing it for, and I guess, like you said, asking them, how long do you want to keep doing this?
Yeah, so asking like I'd like to see at least 4 years experience because, as I said, the turnover rate sits around that, I'd say, 1 year mark. If they're there for 4 years, the chances are that they're going to stick around for another couple of years. Also asking what their preferences are for the next 5 years. Do they want to stay in property management? Do they want to get in sales? It's just a free flowing conversation. Like, you want people to have ambitions, right? But you've also got to do what's best for you. If they do have those ambitions to get into that, additional roles within their business, then what's their succession plan? Who are they training up to then take over your property? So having those conversations are key, because all that experience that people gain over any career is super valuable, right?
Yeah, so valuable. What else?
So I like to look at, like, the reason why I want experience is they understand the common problems that do come up when you have a property. So things that do break, how to best relay that to the owner and how to best, I guess, fix it. And also having those local trade connections is really important because they know, like, and trust them. They've built up that relationship that these trades know to go in, get the work done in an efficient way, because it's not just your property that they're looking at. It's their business in itself, because they're going to get repeat referral business from that property manager. And over time, they've got a really strong relationship. So you just lean on that, so you don't have to have that local influence. You're getting it from your property manager. And another key part is really understanding the laws and the regulations for that state that your property's in, and where you stand as a landlord. Because things may pop up, and it's just good to have that experience to calm you, because some things might come up where it can be quite stressful, because you're like, oh wow, the property, the tenant hasn't paid rent, and what's my entitlement at this stage, and should I push them? And it's the property manager's experience in dealing with multiple situations which you haven't gone through before, because you don't manage multiple properties.
Yeah.
To lean on and to give you that guidance, and it just helps you just go, okay, this is what I'm paying you to do. Go and do it. And it's a more seamless process. Whereas, if you don't have that experience, which I talk about, they're asking you because they're just really conscious of, I want to give great customer service because I'm new. I'm not sure. My boss might be too busy to give me these answers. So I'll ask you, and you tell me what you want. But that's not the right way of going about it, because you're paying them to give you those options, as you spoke about earlier.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the local area and choosing, like, should you choose somebody that knows the local area? And if so, why? I'm pretty sure I'd know why, and most people may be thinking they know a few reasons why, but how important is it to choose the right person in the right location?
Well, access to the property, and there's not too much of a drama for them to go out and see it. That's pretty key for me. And also, they're in the community themselves. So finding a property manager that knows what people are actually looking for in a property helps you make your property more desirable for future tenants, or if you need to relet it, and things like that.
Cool. So we find the right person in the right location with the experience and the knowledge in that space.
Yeah, well, you want the local market expert, right? And when they're working in that location for a number of years, they know where rents are standing. They know that, there's heat in the market. Like at the moment, they would have seen the vacancy rate tightening, getting tighter and tighter, and therefore it's putting pressure on rents. They're going up, so they can feel that market out. You've also got to understand where that property manager comes from as well, in that they're dealing with the tenant directly. They've got a relationship with that tenant. They've also got a relationship with you, who's paying their bills. They need to do what's best for you, not what's best for the tenant. But, for me personally, it's my asset. No one has more care than I do. And even when you're going for rent renewals, always just jump on realestate.com, jump in the rent section, and just have a look around for similar properties, what they're renting for, to provide evidence to your property manager and to yourself to say, hey, rent it's you've advertised it at $500 a week. I can see comparables that sit at $530. So why? And there could be valid reasons. You're not there telling them what to do. You're just questioning. And also, you've got to take into account if you do have a good tenant in place, is it worth losing a good tenant for $30 a week? Where if you were to get a new tenant in place, you're going to have to go and pay lease renewal fees, and you don't know who you're getting in bed with as a tenant in the future. Mm-hmm. And generally, it's 1 week of the rent that's a lease renewal or finding a new tenant. So that cost needs to be baked into the back of your mind to say, well, yeah, I'll make an extra $30 a week, but I'll lose $500 for that 1 week to the manager for renewing the lease.
My mind goes to, all right, the property manager is working for me, and sometimes they feel like they're working for the tenant, and they will try and get the tenant on side, or get you on side with the tenant, which I've had happen to me, with a rent increase, saying, oh, this is the rent, this is the current market rent, the tenant only wants to pay this, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna be a dick about it. Like, I'm not gonna increase it too much that they leave, and too much that it's like more than market rate, because that's not fair. That's just silly. I'm not all about the money. I'm long term, and they're a good tenant. So they wanted to not increase it. I was like, hang on a second. I'm not going to not increase it when the market rate is higher than what you're currently paying. But the property manager was sort of saying, hey, maybe it's not best to increase it. Like, if you are going to increase it, maybe not too much, because I felt like they really just wanted to make sure they had an easy tenant to manage on their side as well. So my mind goes to, how do I put the property manager to work for me harder? Not that I want to milk them for more dollars, right? But I want me and my property to make more money. And in turn, I want to share a portion of that income or that extra money with them. So what are some of the things that we can do to say, hey, get on my side here and let's both win?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is it's good cop, bad cop scenario, where your property manager wants to be that good cop because they got the face-to-face relationship with the tenant. You're the bad cop. You're the landlord. They want to put the rent up. I try to not be, the landlord's putting the rent up, because then people might look at it like, well, stuff the landlord. I'm not going to, do my lawns or, take care of the property. So what I like to do, and it's just simple, is just finding comparable rental evidence. As I said before, you go into your property manager, you don't tell them what to do, you just stand back and say, here's 3 to 4 key rental evidence that suggests that this property would sit between $530 to $550 a week. Yes, I understand it's a great tenant. However, I've also got to pay my mortgage on the property. I've got to pay all the rates. It's a lot more expensive for me to actually be holding this property than it is for the tenant to be paying the rent. So if you look at it that way, unfortunately, the rent does have to go up. Otherwise, it's putting me into a stressful financial situation, which is going to be bad for the tenant if I'm forced to sell. So
yeah, they might have to get kicked out, and then an owner might come in and take over the property.
Yep. Yeah. So trying to just relay it in a cool, calm, and collected way is how I go about it. Going into the psyche of humans, right? Like, which I know you love talking about, is no one likes being told what to do. And from a professional point of view, the property manager, they're humans. I know better than you. I'm the property manager. I live here. Don't tell me what to do. Even though you're paying my bill, they won't say it to your face, but quite often that's what happens in the conversation in the background. But that's just part and parcel of business, right? You can't please everybody.
Yeah. Well, yeah, people are dealing with their own stuff. And as long as you communicate it in a way that is reasonable, hopefully with where they're at in their own mindset, that they can accept it and work with you. But I think that comes down to having good sales skills and doing the right thing ethically, even if you do have good sales skills, to get them on your side so they're happy to do the work for you and everybody wins.
Yeah. And also thinking about all these potential complications that may come up in the future. First-time investors don't think about it. They just go with whoever they either get recommended or quite often it might be the property manager of the sales agency that sold them the property.
Yeah, the buyer's agent might say, go use these people.
Yeah, buyer's agent, or if they went for them themselves directly, the sales agent, there's generally a property management arm to each sale business. So what I would be putting in place is those expectations. So obviously listen to this podcast and develop your own list of questions, and that's a key question as to how do you go about rent reviews, and where does that sit? Can I provide evidence to justify? And would you mind if I did that? They're always going to say yes, but you're coming at it from a neutral ground, and you can have those conversations up front and document it, because if it does pop up in the future, you go, oh, remember that time when we came on board and we talked about this? It feels like this situation. And I obviously want to do the best thing by the tenant, the best thing by you, but also I need to do what's best for me as well. I'm just, having to go myself. So that's pretty key, and also that's why I say 12-month agreements, because don't be shy in saying, look, thanks, but no thanks. Like, you haven't showed up for me. So
It's what you've got, what you talked about here before starting the episode. It really comes down to communication skills, and it's not just the communication skills that you should be putting on the property manager. It's the communication skills. Like, I think that if you're the owner of the property, you should set the bar of the level of communication that you have with the property manager. Like you said, it's a relationship. At the start of a relationship, lay out the ground rules, lay out all your values, lay out what's important for you, and say, this is what success looks like for me. This is what would make me happy. If you can fulfill that, we're going to win. What can I do to make you happy? If I can fulfill that too, in terms of like how we communicate, is it through text? Is it through phone calls? Is it through email? Whatever it is, how do you like to work best? Because if I give you what you want and you give me what I want, we're going to win, and we're going to love each other, and we're going to have a good time with this. Communication is so key there, right?
Yeah, and another key point that I want to hit on is with most property management agreements, there's a minimum spend where is built into the contract, where they can spend on your behalf up to X dollars. So just read through the lease agreement and the property management agreement you've got with them, because some people have different thresholds. Like, as an example, one of my properties, I've got a $330 limit. So basically I say, don't ask me questions. I don't want to deal with it if it's under $330. Just get it done, get it sorted, because it's just not worth my time. Whereas some people might be like, well, where was that $100 spent? Why was it spent? And it's spent for a good reason. They're not just spending money for diddly.
Yeah.
And you can always ask those questions. When you're looking at your rental statements coming through, it'll say, plumber called out, tap leak, and it could be, obviously it's tax deduction anyway, but they've sorted it, it's all good. You can question them on it. They'll generally say, they'll shoot you an email saying, hey, we've organised a plumber to go around to fix this issue, just giving you a heads up. And that's completely fine. Some people might want to be a bit more micromanagey and say, $100 a week, $100 per item, which
doesn't get you far.
Well, they're going to be calling you at every turn to fix something, and they don't want anything to be fixed either. Like, it's not in the best interest to just keep sending trades out there or keep invoicing you, unless you get to the stage where you're like, this just keeps on happening, and why? That's when you have those conversations with them.
Yeah, so my manager, we got something fixed in the kitchen. It was a leak. And 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks later, there was something that happened that came up. There was water in the kitchen again. She said, I'll send a plumber out to check it out. And I said, well, if you're sending the plumber out, can you see if it's the same issue? Because I don't want to, maybe we change the plumber. And what she said to me, she's like, oh, no, if it's the same issue, we won't be paying for it. I won't let you be charged. So you want to make sure a property manager has that on their side as well, where they're like, no, like, we want the best trades. And that's typically what they're going to do. They're going to, like you said, They're going to know the area. They're going to know the best trades. They're not going to put more work on their plates because they hired the wrong person that cost them more money, right?
Yes, exactly. And they're obviously they're not ever the cheapest trade. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Important, I think.
Yeah, because obviously you pay peanut to get monkeys.
Yeah,
which is a classic saying in this world. But you can always jump on like High Pages where you can go and try and find quotes for other things. They'll have their specific trades that they only refer to because they know, like, and trust their work. They don't want to refer you to a trade which they don't know of because it could come back and bite them in the ass, and they don't want to deal with having to resend people back. So yeah, just keep that in the back of your mind too.
So just like we talked about now, is a good tradie is worth their weight in gold, and it's worth paying them. The same thing goes with a property manager. How much should we be paying?
Good question. So they differ all around Australia. So in your Sydney, Melbourne, your major CBDs, they are more around that 5% management fee. And you go further out to, Western Australia, the standard is around 8.5% at the moment, which is, people get blown away like, wow, why am I paying 8.5%? You're like, well, in Sydney, you probably rents for $1,200 a week. So on a weekly basis, you're probably paying something similar to these people to manage property. It's just that, in other locations where it's a lower rental figure, they charge a higher percentage. And look, a lot of the property managers, they know what other people charge, and they're not willing to drop themselves down to like a 5% rate if they want 8.5%. But that doesn't mean you don't have a step for negotiation either. I'd like to sit there and go, well, get 3 quotes from three different managers. It's not just their management fee either on a percentage basis. It's all the additional costs. Like some people might charge
the startup fee of like getting them on board and
and then renewal fees are classic. Some people do half a week, some people do a week for a new tenant to put in place. And these people, they need to get paid that money too, because you think about, in order to get a new tenant into a property, they might charge you 2 weeks rent, but that might be, say it's $900. You break that down, it probably takes 10 hours to go.
The marketing involved with getting somebody in and selecting the right tenant.
Yep, open home and all that. So it's like, well, that's just the price of business.
Yeah.
And you can't expect these people to work for pennies, because that's why the turnover is so high, is that they don't get appreciated for what they do because there is a low barrier to entry. So if you find a good property manager, I find it's similar to the trades, right? Pay peanuts, you get monkeys, but it's always worth that question. Like a classic thing that I do is I get 3 of the property managers to give me their fee proposals for clients. And then I go to the client and say, well, all these 3 are obviously classic property managers that I would use. Great experience. Here's their fee schedule. What would be your preference? And they would look at the 3 of them and say, well, that one's cheaper, but I like the level of experience and detail this person's gone into.
Yeah.
So then I go back to that person and say, you're the favorite in our selection process. We want to go with you. However, the barrier at the moment is that you're just a bit too expensive. So are you? What are you willing to take on this property for on a management basis? And they might turn around and say, I know my worth and I've got enough on my plate. I don't want it unless it's X. And you got to respect that.
That's good. I would be more inclined to go with them then.
Yeah. Well,
for the high price too.
Yeah, but it's always worth the question. They might
it's definitely worth the
question.
Oh,
look, where's the other ones at? It's a classic question. Like, well, we've got one at 7.5%, one at 8%. You're at 8.5%. They're tossing up between yours and the 7.5% because it's a big jump, and they either go down to 7.5% or they go to 8%. You let them decide, because that way they don't feel like they're being forced into a relationship which you're going to be having with these people.
It's a really good question. It's a really good thing to say, because you don't want to be like, oh, you're at 7, can you come down to 6? And they're going to be like, that sucks.
Stop taking that pit. Yeah. And also that's
You don't want to form resentment.
Yeah, in my younger days, I just enjoyed the
thrill, the rush. You loved it.
Yeah, and you screw them down for the client and even for yourself, but then they're coming out of that deal feeling underappreciated, and they're just like, oh, well, this guy's a bit of a tight-ass dick, but, I need the management. It's a good thing. I've taken it on board. But they may not treat your property with the level of respect they treat others. So allow them to come to that decision, but obviously you've got to paint the picture in a way that they feel like they're deciding. Is kind of my point.
Yeah, I think that's why the communication at the start is so good. Like saying, "Hey, this is where you're at. You're the top pick. I'm just wondering if you could do, any better."
We want sponsorship by Yeti.
Yeah, we love our Yetis. Come on, Yeti, get on board here.
Anyway,
so,
sorry.
With the communication at the start, you are then setting the pace and getting them on your side. And the more they love working for you, the easier it's going to be in the future. So why would you not make sure you allow it always to be a win-win where they're excited to work with you and they respect that, yep, you're good. And they've had the conversation, you're the top pick, just want to see if you can do anything better. If they say no, cool, still going to go with you. You don't tell them that, but, I would be more inclined. I feel like it would be more of a win for me to somebody say, hey, push back on me and say, look, no, I'm not going to decrease on my price. This is what I'm worth. Then that allows me to go, cool, thanks, I respect that madly, and they're going to respect that I respect that madly, and go away and do a really, really good job. So
just disclaimer at the end, say, look, you're amazing. I like the way you've gone about that. You know your worth. I also know, I'm looking forward to you bringing that into, the negotiations for lease renewals in 12 months' time. Love your work. And you're motivating them to go, all right, we're a team here.
Yes.
So good options.
Yeah, team that is so important. Like the team that you have, and this is just one person on your team, the team that you have for your property is going to allow you to make more money and make your life so much easier, save you time and money.
Yeah. Well, getting to that point is those questions around organisational skills is really important as well.
So what sort of questions are you going to talk about and ask about in terms of organisation?
Understand their systems and processes. How long they've been using that. That process for managing their tenants, and what what they see as the benefits, the pros and the cons of it. Because some businesses might just be running like an Excel spreadsheet, but it just doesn't have that level of detail that all these software systems that have at the moment. Like Property Me is a portal. There's a lot of rental portals, which you can ask what portals do you use for your, property management systems, and then you can go and understand, Google it, look at how they work, but also they will tell you one thing, but it gets to a stage where you've got to commit and see where that journey goes. I mean, it's not the most complex job in the world, to be straight. It's just more, the hardest part is dealing with humans and their emotions.
Yeah. So I've shared and just a couple of examples from just my WA property. Do you have any examples of terrible property managers versus good property managers?
Yes. Yes. So good questions to ask to them is, how often do you do your reviews? So you go in, you inspect the property, they take photos, and they send you a report. I've heard of property managers that don't even do that on an annual basis. You want to be doing it, in my opinion, at least twice a year. The general preference is towards that 3 times a year. Some people like 4, but there is a fee involved. It might be, it's nominal, might be $100 for them to go out and do that report. But by doing that, it's keeping the tenant honest in that property managers coming through, they're going to make reports. They're actually cleaning the property, looking after it. And that's what you want your tenant to be doing, because it's that if you hold a property for so many years and the maintenance gets let go, it's going to cost you more money in the future because you want people going in, you want them checking the floors, checking the roofs, making sure everything's like dusted down, the oven's clean because it's not building up mold and residue. The shower glass. I mean, I've been into many properties as I was valuing, and
man, just the stories you have of some of the properties you've seen, like
there was this unit in Southport that I valued every year, and
you valued it once a year.
Yeah, and that's like we'll cover this probably in one of the next episodes or future episodes. Is the importance of assessing your position every 12 months.
Okay.
So this person would get it revalued every 12 months to see where their equity position stands.
Yep.
And where that rental stands from my point of view, because I do a rental assessment and also a value assessment. But this tenant had their Christmas tree up all year round.
I love it.
Like they didn't ever take it down. And it was the same tree, and like I'd go in there in like when I say go in there every year, I'd be going in there in like July, August. Like you're like, what are you doing? Is the Christmas tree still up? Like, and then you look at it and you're like, okay, cool, that's interesting. And then you go into the bathroom.
Did that thing to bring the value of the property down?
No, but it was my probably annoying because the residue built up in like the shower glass screen, and that is the concerning part where I don't like the way things happen is that some people don't get taught how to look after themselves, and they're students. They might come to Australia, or
there's no judgment here. It's just a situation.
Yeah, and like maybe they're
they're not able to.
Well, they don't know that, hey, if I don't look after this property, it's going to go to shit pretty quick.
Yeah.
And they either expect someone else to come in and clean it. But anyway, the build up in like oil residue in the kitchen, and then in the bathroom shower screens, it was like it was glass, but you couldn't actually see through. It was all like a fog because there was just such a build up of residue on that. And for me, I'm like, oh, it's disgusting. It also holds moisture. Moisture leads to mold. Mold's bad for your health. And also you can decay your property over time because that mold gets into the grout and then it just kind of goes to shit. So they don't know that, obviously, but your property manager should.
And so what happened when you took a photo of this shower screen and you put it in the report and sent it to the owner? What did they say anything about this Christmas tree in the shower screen?
Like a movie. I don't know. I send my report and I make my notes. But that's the property manager to discuss with the owner. I'm not going to. I'm not there to tell a property manager what to do. I'm not getting paid for that.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep an eye out, and even as owners of properties, they might not even know that like that's the issue that they're facing. Like even with trees overhanging gutters, and owners of properties might not even think about it. That hey, actually trees lead to build up of leaves in the gutter. If it rains heavily, then that overpours into your roof line. That can cause water damage. Once again, mold, damage, flood, all that kind of stuff. The property. So, yeah, just get educated. If you're going to invest in property, you've got to know there's some simple things to help. Just maintain the property.
And you want your property manager to know that, right?
Yes, 100%. They should be telling you. That's the proactiveness that we talked about, which is having that experience. In their best interest, they don't want to deal with dramas. So they walk into properties and they go, I can see that as a drama. Let's let the owner know, and we'd recommend, getting the gutters cleaned, or recommend getting a high pressure clean because there might be moss build up on the driveway that could result in someone slipping, and that could be a potential lawsuit.
The way I think in terms of it being a long term, if I was a property manager and having a long-term view, is I would want to ensure that I do such a good job managing your property that it leads to when you do want to sell, you can't go anywhere else but me, right? So that I would suggest people listening is to think about when you do ask them what's your long-term goals with managing this property, or like what's your why, how long are you in this for? If you see signs of them talking about that, and I dare say that, because there's a high turnover, that a lot of property managers won't mention things like this, but if you find somebody that does say, hey, my goal is to make it so good managing a property for you that you can't sell through another agency, how could you not want to go through that person?
Yeah, well, you want that level of motivation for sure, but for me as a professional, I'd still turn around and say, well, let me run the agent matchmaking process to make sure you're getting the best agent in that property to sell it.
Let's talk about our matchmaking. We'll talk about that soon.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's just, a key part of what we do for people is making sure they're getting the best real estate agent and property manager or buyer's agent. And that's just through...
And finance broker.
And broker, just one, being so heavily involved in the industry, but also two, knowing what to look for in these good people. If you go to sell, then we run that process, but also you give your property manager, their sales team, a shot at it to prove their worth. But at the end of the day, you're only selling this property once, so you want the highest value, right?
Yeah. In essence, what we're all about here, Property Pals, is helping you build a world-class team. And the way I like to think about it is when you hear somebody's acceptance speech for a medal or for a trophy, it could be a sporting athlete, or it could be somebody that's won a movie award or whatever it is, acting award. When they go up and speak about and thank everybody, who do they thank first? It's typically their team, because they have only somebody that has world-class results has a world-class team, and that's what we want to help you guys have, is like a world-class team that we vet, that we use, and recommend those for you. And a part of that is choosing the right property manager and also the sales agent, our matchmaking service.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. But property management is it's key. But there's a few really key tips there that obviously we touched on. Another thing I wanted to obviously problem solving. It's a common sense thing for me, where we talked about that things do go wrong. Expect things to go wrong. You don't want someone who's going to freak out and stress over that situation. And generally, with experience, that reduces that type of behaviour. Hence why I always say have 4+ years. The property managers, it's like everyone, they'll promise you the world, but to get those referrals is key, and talk to other, even ask other owners essentially that might have that relationship with them to get their opinion. It's always good. They're obviously only going to give you the ones that they know are going to give the good reviews if you talk to them. But at least by asking the question, it's triggering in the back of their mind, oh, this person has thought about this, they're experienced, and if I don't do good by them, then they're going to leave me. So referrals, online research, interview 2 or 3 property managers, because each property manager will give you a different spiel, and it'll educate you as to what you could look for in the next interview that you're running, or if you want to go back to another person that you interviewed at the start and ask them a few more questions before making a decision. That would be a couple of really key tips, and also ensure everything's in writing when you're going down and signing those documents. So and if you're struggling, reach out to us for help. We can recommend property managers. That's what we do. So there's as I said, there's good, there's great, and there's shit. So we want to give you the great one. So if you have any questions, reach out. Happy to help.
What's the email?
Oh, hello@propertypals.au.
Yeah.
Yes, got that one right.
Yeah. And also, when you do email us, give us some feedback. Let us know what you do like about the pod and what you think we can do to make the pod better for you. If you have any questions as well that we can cover, that'd be awesome. We're all about feedback, because the only way that we can grow is from you guys giving us feedback and letting us know. So,
and subscribe.
Yeah.
Yes.
On all the channels.
I like this, and if you don't like it, well, let us know as well.
Yeah.
Feedback's always good.
Catch you on the next one.